Crime rates are going through the roof in many states. Yes, that's the bad news. And you knew it already because you cannot avoid it. Now, there's a lot of reasons for increased levels in crime. One of them is the border crisis and mass illegal immigration. Now, because of this crisis, you may have heard of some crimes that have been happening for a long time, but you just didn't get that much media attention before. Things like drug trafficking, violence and robbery in border cities and border states. And it's good that we're getting more information about these crimes. But there's one crime that I really want to talk about today. And it's been going on for a very, very long time, but you may have heard a bit more about it in recent times because of the border crisis, or maybe for some other reason. But it is going on, and it is something that really affects us more than we realize, or more than we want to realize. It's one of these crimes where you don't really want to think about it, let alone talk about it. But the reality is that if you just pretend a crime doesn't exist, it's, pretending that it doesn't exist doesn't make it go away. Okay. You know that. I know that. So let's talk about it. You are going to love talking to these two wonderful, brave women that I'm bringing on the show today. And we are talking about modern day slavery. Yeah, slavery. So didn't we end slavery a long time ago? Well, yeah, that's what we all kind of thought. But modern day slavery exists in the form of sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And we're going to hear from a survivor of human trafficking. And we're not going to get into all the really devastating details of her story. We're going to look at how she was able to overcome what she got into, why she's been able to heal, how she's been able to heal, and why she speaks out and how she helps others. We're also talking to Becky Rasmussen, who is the executive director of a wonderful organization that helps trafficking victims called Call to Freedom. So please stay tuned. I promise you a very interesting conversation, a very hopeful conversation, but not always easy. We have to touch on some topics that may be a little difficult to hear, but I promise you, if you get through to the end, you're going to really appreciate what these women have to say, what they've been through. If they can do it, you can too. Please listen through. You will appreciate it. I really believe that. You are listening to, or perhaps you are watching, the Today with Kay show. My name is Kay Rubicek. Let's get into it. How is your coffee supply? Is your coffee really 100% organic and roasted right here in the US? Well, Freedom First Coffee is. It's a gourmet coffee roasted in Victorian-era roasters in the heartland of the USA. Their tagline is, "Tastes like freedom." I do not know what freedom flavor exactly really is, but I can say it tastes great. I drink it myself. I would like to invite you to give it a try. Go to freedomfirstcoffee.com. That's freedomfirstcoffee.com. Use the promo code K-A-Y, for a discount, and that will also support this show. I like to say we vote with our dollars, so buying your coffee from Freedom First Coffee is a delicious way to vote for freedom. And if you already have your own favorite coffee, no problem. You can buy me a coffee. Go to my website, kayrubicek.com. That's KAYRUBACEK.com. Click on the Coffee with K button, and there you can buy me a virtual coffee. Every coffee helps me to keep this show going. I'm sitting in the studio room all on my own. I do not have a crew. I do not have a fancy setup. This is just me and me being able to bring you free content independently. I'd like to be able to keep on doing that. So go to my website and you can buy me a coffee. Every coffee helps. Becky, I want to start with you first. Thank you so much for being here to talk with me. And I have to ask you, with the industry that you work in and the work that you do, are you that kind of person? Because I am. I'm that kind of lady that people say, oh no, she's going to talk about something scary, and it's that it's more scary because you actually know what you're talking about. You've done your homework. You've been in here. You've been in the trenches. You've talked to people. I mean, you know much more about this than I can even describe. Are you that person? Do people get scared of what you're going to say because they just know it's true and they don't want to
Yeah,
face
I
it?
think there's a little bit of both. I think people are scared of what they don't know. And I think education is very key. For me, I'm very passionate about this issue because it's a call. God made that very clear that I was called to this. And as I journeyed life with survivors, I became more passionate because their voice was unheard. The situations of trafficking are hidden, and that's how traffickers like to do this business. They like to hide it within our community. And if we can be a voice to expose what is hidden, what that does is number one, hopefully eliminate some of it being facilitated, also eliminate some individuals being recruited. I've navigated with survivors and parents that don't understand this. And so education is really key. And if we remain silent, there's a stat, and it varies, of 1 to 3% of victims are ever identified.
So now that means that 97% don't leave and are still in trafficking. How
Yeah.
big is this
This
problem?
problem, we haven't even scratched the surface of the magnitude of what's happening within our communities. Modern day slavery, we thought we abolished that years ago. It is still happening. Over 40 million people. We don't have correct stats. We don't really understand between labor and sex trafficking what is happening. And when we say that 97% of people don't leave, most of the victims that we worked with don't even understand that they're being trafficked because their trafficker is so good at manipulation and getting them to believe that that was their choice. And so for us, giving that voice and allowing survivors to self-identify, to teach first responders how to identify trafficking situations, how do we reach those individuals that are coming through our doors in our medical communities, within our schools, within our law enforcement? Those are first responders who are coming in contact with these situations. And if we don't educate them on how to identify, a lot of times trafficking victims don't leave those situations. So it's really up to us as a community to get educated on this and to allow victims to know that there is safety and basic needs.
You mentioned that a lot of victims don't even realize they're being trafficked. And Mary's going to tell us a little bit about that too. She describes herself as the girl next door. I mean, wow, this it's not like this is far away. It's not like this is over even the border over in Mexico. We're talking about right here in America and likely in many other countries. So just at a very basic level, how do you educate people if to get them first just to look at this problem and realize that it actually is a
Yeah.
problem as a first step?
What we try to do is share survivors' voices at the table as well. But you need to expose something that's hidden. Human trafficking didn't go into statute until early 2000s. Most people have never even, in the law enforcement realm, and states attorneys and U.S. attorney's office have never even understand the statute or how it's facilitated. And this is business. So this isn't like sexual exploitation. It has elements of sexual exploitation, but this is business. You have somebody who makes a lot of money off of selling human beings for either labor or sex. And when there's money attached to a business, they will learn new ways to facilitate this. And so we have this three-prong situation that we're dealing with. It we have this demand that is setting the tone for what the traffickers are recruiting. So there are no boundaries to what we're looking at as far as human trafficking. Each individual who's recruited is based on what the demand wants, and that's the buyer. So if the buyer wants a blue-eyed, blonde-haired girl from South Dakota, guess what that trafficker who's a business person is going to do? I'm going to groom and recruit a blue-eyed, blonde-haired girl because I can make a lot of money off of her. And so when people put a stereotype to what this looks like, there isn't. And when we talk about labor trafficking as well, we have so many vulnerabilities within foreign national populations, within some of the massage parlors, some of those entities that we think we're doing normal business with, but do we really know what's happening behind the scenes? And I always say to people, if your gut is saying there's something not right in a situation, you're probably right. And you need to report that. Polaris, which is a national human trafficking hotline, has a stat, and that is a stat that every county in the United States has had a report of human trafficking. Every county in the United States.
Every county, right? That you didn't say every state, you said every county.
Since COVID, there's been a 120% increase of online recruitment. And so traffickers don't stop what they're doing. They change their tactics. And as soon as we get onto one tactic, the latest that we've heard is now it's not girls. They're going after boys, young boys. And they have what's called boiler rooms set up. And they're not in the United States. They're in the Philippines and they're in Africa. And they are paid 8 hours a day to perp your kids. That is their full-time job.
Perp our kids. What exactly does that mean?
So what they will do is they will go online, Instagram, Facebook, any type of online media communication, and they will begin dialoguing with our children. So they say, I want to have a relationship with you. I think you're very cute. Will you send me a picture of yourself? And so they'll ask for a nudie picture. And so kids at this point in time will send a picture, and that's when the blackmail begins, where they will actually say, all right, now I have this, I'm going to blackmail you, go get your mom's credit card or send me additional pictures. When those pictures go out, they're going out onto pornography sites. They are exploiting our kids, and they're making a lot of money off of it. And what is happening is now they're targeting boys where they were targeting young women before. You know, we do a lot of awareness on girls and what the victimization of girls, but there aren't a lot of services for boys. And today what we're seeing is this new pursuit of young boys. And boys are very different. They don't come out as easily as young girls do. They have the shame factor, the guilt factor, and we're seeing a lot of suicides attached to this type of victimization. And that's not good enough. And the average age of a trafficking victim is 11 to 14. So it is getting younger, and if the demand wants an 8-year-old, they're going to get an 8-year-old.
Friends, if you're listening to this or if you're watching this and you're feeling sick, that's the reality of what's going on right now. It's uncomfortable, but these are our kids, these are our families, this is our society. This could be your neighbor. And we're going to be coming back after a short break, and we're going to also talk with Mary. Mary's a survivor from South Dakota. She calls herself, just the girl next door, and she's going to tell us what she survived. And really stick around, because we have to look at problems, but we have to look at solutions. Sure, there's a lot of bad news out there. There's plenty. You can get as much bad news as you want, but how much good news is there? Much, much more. I guarantee it. You have to believe it. You will see it if you look for it. Stay tuned. We're coming right back. You are listening to, or perhaps you are watching Today with Kay, and I'm Kay Rubacek. Are you interested in investing in gold to secure your finances? If you've been listening to any conservative podcast over the past few years, you would have heard plenty of ads for gold investment, and it is popular and it is important. And if you're thinking about it but haven't done it yet, there's still time. With the way the economy is looking right now, we need to do whatever we can to stay ahead of the coming recession. Now, I recommend you go and talk to Ira at ourgoldguy.com. Mention my name and he'll give you sound advice. Make your own opinion. Go to his website, ourgoldguy.com, and take a look at the articles he publishes there, the information he's putting out. See if it resonates with you. I think you'll be glad that you did, that you talked to him. Talk to Ira at ourgoldguy.com and see if he is someone you want to work with to invest in gold. We are talking with the executive director of calltofreedom.org, Becky Rasmussen. And we also have a very, very special guest, Mary, with us. We're going to hear from Mary in just a moment. And before we get to the personal story, the big picture right now is people are looking at illegal immigration coming across the border. And that's, I think, it's probably brought a lot more attention to human trafficking, and people are saying, well, look, it's coming across the border. But you've been in this a lot longer than the news has been focused on the southern border. Could you just tell me a bit about that? What have you seen? Has the issue got more attention now?
I think when we don't have regulations at the border, illegal activity comes across, and we need to make sure that we're regulating what is coming across or who is coming across our borders. This is a really difficult topic to talk about because we've seen an increase of illegal activity within communities across South Dakota, which has been contributed to the borders. And so we need to do regulation of that. We need to begin to look at how do we monitor this. But we also have a lot of individuals who are vulnerable individuals just looking for a new beginning that come across the borders and are being identified by traffickers coming across our borders. And so we have this multitude of vulnerable, good people coming across the borders, but we also have this organized control and organized crime. And so we really need to address monitoring what's happening at our borders and really make sure that we are giving the attention to it that's needed instead of allowing it to just happen at this pace and this unmonitored pace. And I'm concerned about what is going to happen in the next few years because of what is coming across the borders.
Now, there's a lot of different types of trafficking victims, and could you introduce the different types of trafficking victims that you've seen, and then please introduce our very special guest, Mary.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of different ways that trafficking is facilitated. The most common that we see here in South Dakota, because we have vulnerabilities within reservation, is familial trafficking, which is a mother, father, aunt, or uncle trafficking their own child. That is very common, and it's very difficult to identify because a lot of trafficking victims are introduced by the person that they're supposed to trust and who's supposed to nurture and care for them. And so that is a very difficult form of human trafficking that is hard to identify and to address. And usually they come out later in life unless we find them within our systems. And then we also have organized crime. We can go in many different ways of this, but organized crime is usually facilitated by gangs. But what I've learned over the course of journeying life with victims is that usually there's multiple organized fronts of this facility. So it's facilitated by gangs, but usually on the back end are cartel, who are the people that are untouched, that don't get identified in this process. And so we talk about forced criminality, where 90% of individuals that are being trafficked have records, and that's because they're in organized fronts, and typically they take the fall for that organized crime. And so Mary, I want to introduce Mary, who's a very special person to myself, to Call to Freedom, and to many survivors. She is really that beacon of hope. She represents something that most survivors don't think that they are able to obtain, and that's freedom. And that's being able to then one day share her story to help others. And I just have the privilege of introducing Mary and allowing her to share not only her story, but how is she giving back? Because it is possible, if you're listening and you're in this situation, it is possible to get safety and to come out. And Mary represents that hope. So Mary, would you like to share?
Yes, well, thank you so much, Becky. That was very kind, and Kay for having me on today. It is a very difficult to talk about your own journey and what has happened to you when you didn't understand it. You didn't understand being vulnerable as a growing up, the your own lifestyle. Everybody has some sort of vulnerability in life as you're growing up and as a youth, to be accepted, to have friends, to be a part of something. So a lot of people's vulnerability lies there. There's also a huge population. I was not sexually assaulted as a child. I was not sold as a child. I did not have that abuse in my home. I was not homeless. But these are all areas that where children and youth and adults are vulnerable to being trafficked. And the traffickers use that, and they use that against us. So I would be considered kind of that girl next door. I was a 4.0. I attended a local Catholic high school, and I went on to college for a little bit, and then I returned home because I needed to help out in my family. I did leave the borders of South Dakota to search for a better life outside of my home state. And I ended up meeting a gentleman, and I wouldn't call him a gentleman. I don't give him a name, I don't give him that recognition. I met a gentleman, and again, I'll put him as a horrible, horrible individual that did end up trafficking myself. I entered a very dark world. I saw such of the evils in life that people should not have to witness. And I use that to turn it around now. This is when I was 18 years old. And when I met him, he had slowly, slowly taken over my entire life. Made me realize the only people I could trust was this cartel. They're the only ones that cared about me. So I slowly moved away from my family, ending up in this very dark world, moving out of the country, and to being sex and labor trafficked and forced criminality. When I came home, and that was a whole journey in itself, it's probably a whole different episode to understand everything someone goes through, and we don't go through all the details. But when I did come home, I didn't understand what had happened to me. The community was not aware. They didn't use the word trafficking. They didn't use the word sexual. Um, they didn't use labor trafficking. And so the community, not because they weren't understanding as far as I'd been through something, but they didn't understand human trafficking.
So you didn't understand being what trafficked was before that, is that correct?
Correct. I didn't understand being sold for money was trafficking. I
Mm.
understood that I'm having sex with this person, I'm being sold to this person, but that's what my life is. That is my bed, and I had to lie in it. Those are the people that care about me. That's my family. I could not process whatever is normal in society at the time. I was survivors when I talk to them, when they come right out of, quote, the life. It's not a life, but that's what we say. We're in the life. We are victims, and we come out and we cannot understand because that's love for us. That's acceptance for us. And now hard work really starts then when you come out and suddenly realize I was trafficked. It's just this whole thing starts exploding in you to say, I do need help. I can discuss this. It's very hard because these are people that I thought cared about me and were my family.
It is often, as you're saying, in the cases that it's someone that we trust who betrays that trust for dollars or something, whatever reason, usually for money, right? Usually for money. They betray that personal trust and respect of each other as fellow human beings. And when that trust is broken, you then are sent through a very traumatic process of having to reevaluate what is trust, and then you regain trust with this new person that's caring for you, and you don't realize that that's actually harmful to them and to you, absolutely, and to society as a whole. And then when you get out of it, you're trying to regain trust in society and with people around you, and especially within a general situation where a lot of people don't understand the term. I think more of us do now. More people can say, yes, I'm aware that sex trafficking is happening here in the US. Not enough people say that yet, but more people are saying that. And for people to accept, one, that it's happening is very important, but two, that it happens, it breaks trust between people. I think that seems to be very important, because then it also, if we could accept those two facts, which are facts from what you've told me and also all the research I've done, they're facts, then if we can accept those two facts, then I would imagine that would help the healing process for people like you, Mary, and so many others who have actually left that trafficking situation, or are wanting to, but they feel it's impossible, like you said.
That piece of unconditional love and acceptance. So we only know conditional love. That's the only thing that I knew. So for someone to be nice, kind, offer something to me without wanting something in return was just so unheard of. I didn't understand. I didn't understand I could pick the type of pizza I wanted to eat because it was always chosen for me. I didn't understand the clothes. I could actually go out. I didn't know how to pick out what clothes I wanted to wear or have my nails done or my hair done, that I could choose that. And it was a very much of a journey to know that I am worthwhile as a person. The community accepts me for me, and they're walking a long time and they're supporting me, and they understand in the sense of how they can understand. Sometimes I say I'm grateful when people don't understand, but they get educated and walk alongside. It means they didn't have to experience the horrific evil in this world that is associated with human trafficking. And it's hard for people when I had to say that one time, but I am grateful for that, because that means it's really hard on me when I've helped and walked alongside so many survivors and heard their journey. And I look at them, I hold their hands, and I say, are you ready
Mm-hmm.
to know that we love you, but you're going to have to learn that? Because there is that hope, knowing you can turn things around. You shed that light and you expose it, because no trafficker is going to come forward and say, I'm the trafficker. No, you expose it and come out and say, I'm worth it. I know it's tough, but we have agencies like Call to Freedom, our community. We have started a support group now for survivors to know that you're not alone. I always felt I was alone, that nobody understood. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, there's a group of us that we do understand each other, and the choices we made and things that have happened to us. And we also have the community that supports us and walks alongside us.
Isn't it so important to remember what you've just said there is unconditional love? You think about that, when people think about solutions to all the problems in our world these days, and everyone's looking for money and they're looking to big power to flick a switch and solve a problem for us. A lot of problems can be solved with unconditional love. I'm a big believer of that. You're a testimony to that. And I noticed on your website, Becky, you've got ways people can support you, and one way that you say is people can pray.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's another form of unconditional love. It's another form of not, we don't need to feel powerless because we may not be sitting in a certain government representative position, or that we may not have a certain number of figures in our bank account. We need to remember the power that we each have. And Becky, can you tell me? I really love how your website asks that, and you ask people to pray for not just the victims, but for you have a bunch of people. Could you tell us who you ask people to pray for and why?
For us, if we don't break the cycle of human trafficking, we're going to have more victims than all of us know what to do with, because this is about money and this is about business. And so we really want to look at the whole cycle of human trafficking. And we ask that people not only pray for those that are being victimized, but also those that are victimizing. And so those that are trafficking, those that are buying, we believe that there's brokenness in the entire cycle. And I don't believe that somebody woke up one day and said, I want to sell people for a living. Somewhere along the way, people got broken, and somebody woke up and got caught in a sex addiction, and they're buying people, and it's gotten out of control. We are never going to end the cycle of human trafficking if we don't address the entire cycle. And I really believe, I cannot speak for survivors, nor would I ever ask them to forgive their trafficker, because I can't even imagine somebody saying that to me and going through what they did. But we can pray. We can pray that traffickers no longer decide that they want to make this their lifestyle. We can pray that God reaches that person who is buying that individual, that maybe doesn't even realize that they're being trafficked, that they think they want that. And he can reach situations that we can't. And there are many times that survivors have walked through the doors and we didn't have the answers. But we sat down and we prayed, and God gave us the answer. And we are seeing lives being changed by his grace. We are seeing people get hope when they didn't think hope was even available. I've had people who have struggled with buying people that want to stop, who've come to me and say, how do I stop? And so that unconditional love can really break a cycle. But also, just as Mary said, it is not what we say, it's what we do. We need to model the walk instead of talk it because survivors have been told one thing and they've been manipulated. It is our jobs as service providers, as community people, as Christians to walk something different and be an example of what it should look like so that that trust is earned. And we don't ask survivors to walk through the doors and trust us immediately. Trust is earned. And so we walk alongside them. We journey life with them. We journey life in their mistakes. We journey life in their successes. They know that we have their back, and that's unconditional love. No matter what choice you make or what you do, if you want to be free of that and you want to get hope, and get restored, that's what needs to happen in this cycle. And so we can talk about putting people behind bars, we can talk about saving lives, but we need to break this cycle, and prayer does that. So I encourage people, if you don't know how to do that, go to calltofreedom.org, look at our website, look at how you can join that fight. If that's praying for somebody, if that's, giving your time, resources, we welcome you in the fight. And that's one of the things the Lord said to me, is unite a community. And I said, I don't know how to do that. In the course of 7 years, I've watched him do it. And people are coming to the table and they're finding their position on the wall. They're saying, I can serve here. I can do this, or I can pray for this. Everybody has a place at the table to fight human trafficking. It doesn't always have to be the same place. It's where your gifting, your talent is, because that's what it takes as a community as well to come together to say no more. And I want to thank you, Kay, for having us to have that ability to share and break the silence over human.
Oh, thank you, Becky, and thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. And friends, we have been talking about a very heavy subject, and there are very heavy topics and dangerous things going on in the world, but we actually have to face them now. This is our reality. We cannot just put our head in the sand and say, it's not my problem, because it is your problem and it is our problem. And we can actually do something about it. These ladies have proven that they are doing something about it. They have done something about it. They will keep doing something about it. You can too. And at the very least, you've got to the end of this podcast. You listened to the whole story. Kudos to you. You sat through the hard truth, the reality of what's going on with sex trafficking in our world today. I encourage you to do one more thing. Go and tell someone about it. Ask a question. Ask them. Just talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about the hard truths, because this is our reality. We face it with unconditional love. We face it with truth, with prayer, and we can do anything. Remember the power that you have. Mary's just given us that wonderful example. She is testimony to that. And so are all the other people that Becky's been working with for many years. So thank you again, ladies, for being with me, and all of the friends out there watching or listening. You have been watching Today with Kay. If you are listening, please do that thing. There's a review button on the podcast. Please click the 5-star review. If you don't want to give me a review, or you want to give a low review, don't worry about it, because the algorithm's like 5 stars. So you're better off not to give me a review, and I promise I will never be offended. And if you're watching on a video, click the like, subscribe button, all of those things. Click share. I would love you to share this. Let more people know about this. Yes, if you don't want to talk about this issue, maybe just go and share it somewhere. We can talk about tough topics. We do it all the time here on the Today with Kay show. My name is Kay Rubacek. I really appreciate you for being here with us and talking with us today. I'm going to see you again next time on the same show, the same place, same time, whatever that is in your world. Have a great week. I'll see you then.